Hi, I'm Dr. Cohen. I'm here to give a basic overview of the executive branch. The Constitution devotes Article 2, the executive article, to the President. Article 1 on the Congress is 4 times longer. The founders were deeply suspicious of a concentrated executive power. They had just fought a war against a king. The design, the presidency with limited enumerated powers, subject to significant constraints by the other branches, and yet the president commands the most powerful military force in human history. The president speaks to the entire nation and increasingly to the entire world in a single address. The president's signature on a bill makes it a law, a veto can kill it, and the president nominates all federal judges, including Supreme Court justices. The president directs thousands of federal agencies that touch every aspect of American life, and the president negotiates treaties that bind the country. The Richard Nostad's famous insight that the president's formal constitutional powers are surprisingly weak. The real source of presidential power is the power to persuade, the ability to convince Congress, the public, foreign governments, and bureaucratic agencies that what the president wants is in the best interest to provide. A president who can only command has limited power. A president who can persuade has enormous power. The gap between the formal power and the real power has been closing. Every single president since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, has expanded executive authority through executive orders, administrative discretions, claims of inherent constitutional authority, and cooperative Supreme Courts. Today, we're going to look at these 5 objectives. We're going to look at Article 2 powers. We're going to look at explain the cabinet, trace the growth of modern presidency. Article 2, the 3 principles roles. The Constitution grants the president 3 principal roles, each with specific powers and constraints. The chief executive is the president that shall take care of the laws are fully executed. The president has directing the work of approximately 2.8 million civilian federal employees that work for the president are the bureaucratic agencies. He's the commander-in-chief. He's the head of the armed forces. The Congress has the constitutional right to declare war under the War Powers Resolution 1973, imposes a 60-day limit on military deployments without congressional authorization. He's the chief foreign policymaker. The president negotiates treaties with Senate ratification by 2/3, concludes executive agreements without Senate ratification, and receives foreign ambassadors. The distinction between treaties and executive agreements has become enormously consequential. The Paris Climate Agreement, Iran nuclear deal, Trans-Pacific Partnership are all executive agreements, all revocable by the next president. He has the power to pardon. The power to pardon is essentially unreviewable by courts. The president may grant reprieves and pardons for federal offenses, except in the cases of impeachment. The exception means a president cannot pardon themselves out of impeachment. The traditional to modern president is part of the presidential power. It's grown. The traditional presidency from Washington through Hoover understood the office primarily as an executor of congressional will. Presidents executed the laws passed by Congress. They did not routinely and send comprehensive legislative programs to Congress. They communicated with Congress through formal written messages rather than live addresses. FDR transformed the presidency. The Great Depression created demands on the federal government and required executive initiative. No Congress was going to design the New Deal in committee from scratch. FDR's legislative agenda, his fireside chats that spoke directly to the American people, his willingness to use emergency powers and aggressively and scale the federal government, he permanently changed his office. The modern president is expected to have a legislative agenda, to communicate directly with the public, to manage the economy. Youngstown was the essential framework. Justice Jackson's concurrence in Youngstown Sheet and Tube versus Sawyer, 1952, is the essential analytic framework for evaluating presidential power claims. President Truman had seized the steel mills during the Korean War to prevent a strike, asserting inherent executive power as commander-in-chief. The Supreme Court struck it down, and it came up with 3 zones. The first zone is the president acts with explicit and implicit congressional authorization. Presidential power is at its maximum, combining presidential authority with what Congress has delegated, most veto-proof. Courts are very reluctant to interfere. Zone 2, Congress has neither granted or denied the claimed power. The twilight zone, where the president acts in the face of congressional silence. And then Zone 3, the president acts against the express or implied will of Congress. President power is at its lowest ebb, and the president can only act if congressional restriction itself is unconstitutional. So each one of these are the 3 different zones from that case that allow us the presidential authority to be evaluated. So by here we see that there are 4 numbers that scale Trump's impact on the executive branch. Trump has been impeached twice for the House of Representatives, you could see, and never acquitted. We've had 100 plus executive orders in the first day of his second term, and that is keeping pace historically with other presidents. So there's no difference between him and other presidents as he started off his second term. 1,500. He used the pardon many times, just like he did every other president, and he pardoned people on January 6th. But he has done more Supreme Court justices. He's created a conservative Supreme Court justice with three appointments. Other things that's been great by the Trump second term has been DOGE. I'm a big person who wants to limit government. This is why I say great. The Department of Government Efficiency is not a department in any statutory or constitutional sense. It was not created by Congress, so it doesn't have the authority of Congress for funding. It's not funded by appropriation, has no statutory authority, but it was embedded within multiple federal agencies in order to find waste, fraud, and abuse within the government. Schedule F was created by Donald Trump's executive order in the first terms a few months, revoked by on his first term, revoked by Biden on his first day, and then reinstated by Trump on his second term. It reclassifies federal employees in policy influencing roles from career civil servant positions with merit system protections to Schedule S positions that can be dismissed at will. What this is really important is because bureaucratic agency people can be working without being fired for a lifetime. And so what it does is it reevaluates a person's position within government, is that if it's not a career civil service, then they can be fired at will. Trump versus the United States in 2024 was the most important presidential power decision since Youngstown. A 6-3 majority held that the former presidents have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions taken within their core constitutional functions and presumptive immunity over official acts. Only unofficial acts that a private citizen rather than a president would perform can be prosecuted. I'd like to leave you with the key terms today for this to remember for our future discussions.